Want to bet? Then get in on the action at Sports Interaction. Whatever your sport, Sports Interaction has you covered. Bet pregame, in-game, or on one of our many unique prop bets. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN, or in Ontario, download the app now by using the QR code at the bottom of the screen. 19 and over, please play responsibly. It's time for Patrick Kane time. What can you tell us about that situation and whatever could be going on there?
Yeah, let's do a headlines-like segment. I'll be quick because I know we don't have a lot of time today. But, Patrick Kane, huge point in his season and his decision-making. Expected, again, still within 3 to 4 days, I'd say, that he's going to indicate to Chicago management what he'd like to do. We know the Leafs basically are off the board now. If they were ever going to be a serious option, I would say that door is most likely closed. As I've said, there's maybe some hope the Rangers could maybe think about it, but for all intents and purposes, let's call them closed. One new option I've heard about that's out there is that the Edmonton Oilers have expressed at least some small interest here to see if Patrick Kane would be willing to come and waive his no movement clause and go there.
No way. That would be insane.
And so let me be clear. I'm not saying that trade is going to happen because everyone wants to jump on these things, but I know for sure the Oilers have at least expressed some interest to see if there's something that can be done there. Ultimately, like with any team, Patrick Kane is going to be the call. Do you want to move is the first question, and will you move to our city is the second. I've heard, third, fourth party that Kane is at least maybe is piqued his interest, but let's just see where that goes. But there's been at least some small interest there to see if there's a fit. I mean, look, we talked about Erik Karlsson with Edmonton last week. That seems to have gone a little quiet. The Oilers are clearly looking to see how they can make a big move, right? They're not just hunting around the fourth round pick for this rental player. I mean, in this case, Patrick Kane is a rental player, but they're looking to make impactful moves. And so stay tuned there.
Okay. You have piqued my curiosity with discussions about the Edmonton Oilers. Anything with Timo Meier?
Actually, another point on Edmonton
sorry.
Also is that, we've all been wondering what was going to happen, right? There's the waiver, like, is there going to be a big waiver move this week? They ultimately signed a couple players in the American Hockey League to manage in the short term their cap situation. I think a lot of people, including myself, just assumed Jesse Puljujarvi was the odd man out in Edmonton. I mean, it definitely looked and sounded that way, that he would definitely be traded 100%. They are a team that is going to have to create some room by moving a player out. But what's interesting to me is I've heard that in recent days, the Oilers have at least broached the possibility of extending Puljujarvi instead of just trading him, possibly trying to get him to be signed to a cheaper extension beyond this year. He's on an expiring deal. He's a restricted free agent. And, I don't think those talks went anywhere. I'm not sure where they stand at this moment, but, a guy that it just has always seemed like is on his last day in the city, they've at least broached the possibility of seeing if they could extend him. So, I mean, that's pretty interesting too. As we all look to see what moves the Oilers make to create cap space, because whatever they do, if it's a big name or a small name, it's basically money in, money out. And so whether it's someone like Warren Fogle, or maybe still it's Puljujarvi that's the odd man out, maybe it's somebody else they're trading. They have to remove money from that roster, but they're at least seeing if Puljujarvi is willing to stick around. And I don't know if he is at this point, but I just thought it's interesting they've had that discussion.
I just had a weird deja vu moment because that's exactly what you said during the episode that no one will ever hear.
Well,
the Puljujarvi detail.
I mean, but you have to remember, no one's ever heard it but you and Nick and me.
So I know. That's why
still new information that the listeners haven't heard yet.
Very new. It's just, just a shout out to the episode no one will ever hear. Okay, sorry
Timo
about
Meier,
that.
Number one.
Let's go to Timo.
Trade deadline big board.
Let's do
number
it.
one with a bullet. It actually sounds like things have gone quiet here. And so here's what I said on the episode you didn't hear. Sounds like Timo Meier is holding up the market, and I would expect he's the next forward traded, something to that effect. Well, that analysis was not correct because Ryan O'Reilly was, in fact, the next forward traded, along with another forward named Noah Chari. But, it does sound as though things have gone a little quiet on Meier. I wouldn't read too much into that. I mean, obviously, the Leafs now are no longer a bidder there. I still believe New Jersey and Carolina to be the teams with the highest degree of interest and the biggest ability to make this addition. And I think, ultimately the Devils and Hurricanes now know without a doubt that, it's three pieces for Timo Meier. That's what the Sharks ask is. They want a first round pick. They want a young player. They want a nice prospect. That's where some of the haggling comes in, I'm sure, with the list that each team has of prospects. And, now we see what happens, but it doesn't sound as though that, things have cooled off there for the moment. Now, typical caveats. You might be listening to this on Sunday and maybe one phone call's changed things. Maybe New Jersey's come back and said, okay, you can have prospect X. And that moves things forward. But, for the time being, as of Saturday afternoon, that has gone quiet, but I expect it will heat up at some point because Timo Meier only gets more valuable when you take away Horvat, you take away Tarasenko, you take away, Ryan O'Reilly. There's the impactful forwards, and there was a lot of them to enter this trade period. We're losing them one by one, but Meier still is just dangling there for someone.
Okay. We've talked a lot about teams who could be buying at the deadline. What about teams who could be selling at the deadline?
Two stand out to me. The most interesting, arguably, is the Washington Capitals. Now, on Saturday, they're going to play a Stadium Series game outdoors in Raleigh, North Carolina. I don't know that they've fully committed to their plan just yet, but there are indications that the Capitals are now looking potentially at selling some of their players. And what's interesting there is they have a couple defensemen that are pending unrestricted free agents. And one, that's played a huge role in that organization, Dmitry Orlov. The Capitals have had some contract extension talks with him. It sounds like term has been a real sticking point in terms of trying to get him signed. And there is some belief that the Capitals would entertain offers for Orlov. They also have Nick Jensen, a player that's been part of their organization the last number of seasons. And as you go further down the lineup, TVR, not JVR, his brother, who is also involved out of Philly in trade talks, but Trevor Van Riemsdyk, another defenseman with a pretty low ticket in terms of his cap hit. Those are players on expiring deals that I think could be on the market, especially, Washington's had such a tough run of injuries and other issues come up. I think they lead the league in man games lost. It seems as though they're starting to lean fairly heavily towards punting on this season, selling the assets they have to sell, and then rebooting it again next year. The other team, as discussed a little bit, but the Nashville Predators, I believe, could come out of this weekend ready to basically entertain any and all offers on any of their players. So that brings players like Matthias Ekholm into play. I wonder about Jeannot there. He's a pending restricted free agent, hits like a truck, can play, I think, an important bottom six role. I wonder if they make him available. Certainly, I think there'd be heavy interest, but the Predators are a team to really watch, especially if their games this weekend, which haven't been played at the time of this recording, don't go their way. I think that David Poile is ready to shake things up in Nashville.